Hi, friends. Host Eric here, talking with famous people, and I'd like to talk about toxic masculinity, non toxic masculinity, femininity, and the challenges of managing one of the only truly legitimate binary differences amongst different groups of people, so to distinguish people into groups. So, if you've watched the channel for a while, you're aware that my position on race is that it's absolutely not a real distinction, that it's nothing but an arbitrary self-identification and stuff like that. Uh, my position on things like age is that it really doesn't matter. I've talked to young people under 18 who are very interesting and intelligent. I've talked to old people, older than me, very interesting and intelligent. Uh, you know, I've talked to old people who are idiots. The younger people usually are less likely to be idiots, but it's only it's only so true. But gender is a real distinction. In other words, sex is a real distinction, and gender is a real distinction too. It is that which you define against your sex. So, if I'm born a man, born a male, and I self-identify as a man, then my gender is actually the same. If I was born a man and I self-identify as a woman, I'm transgender. There are other forms of transgender too, of course. Like mine, as I've indicated, I go from very manly to super manly, right in that range. Anyhow, that's an example of regular masculinity. One totally normal, usually healthy manifestation of masculinity is for me, to make jokes, I guess, about what a man I am. So the question becomes, what is really the distinction between toxic masculinity and regular masculinity? I can tell you, I became interested in this topic and became very concerned about it in general way back when, in the Steubenville rape case, was my first taste of getting outraged over this shit. I read all the details of the case. I was obsessed with it. I watched every minute of the trial. I'm not every minute of it, but as much as I could. I was involved in forums, typing stuff. It was quite a attention consumer for me at the time, and an evocative media interaction or experience. I felt a lot of strong emotions about it. Now, when you talk about something like rape culture or toxic masculinity, you're really talking about a set of narratives. A set of narratives that people will engage in, and certain narratives that they won't. If you're in a group of guys who are always making rape jokes and always normalizing a light-hearted approach towards sexual violence or other kinds of, what's the word? mean, what's the perfect? I don't really know what the perfect word for it is. It's not all transgressive. Some of it's you can be fucked up and not be transgressive. Uh, and there's lots of shit that these men do that falls directly in that category. Fucked up shit that's not transgressive. I'll tell you, experience my own moment with toxic masculinity. It happened not super long ago, not super long before I met Kimberly, when my ex-wife um, called me up, wanted to be comforted about some shit. I drove down there. I comforted her. Then I pressured her into sex. I mean, pressured meaning guilted, sort of, I guess. I drove all the way down here, kind of shit, you know? I felt fucking awful about it. It was an awful thing to do, like the next day, you know? I'd never do anything like that again. And there's nothing transgressive about it, but it was an example of toxic masculinity anyway. Because I viewed her as a means to an end. I was down there for my own reasons. Down there to get laid because I was having a little bit of problems with my regular masculinity. You know? It's normal and to be expected from men that they're going to want to feel like a man. And to the extent that they don't, that, and it relates to chicks, there are two courses that may occur to them. They may choose the course that I chose, which was to never overstep or overreach my station in that area, so that on all non-romantic sexual levels that I could be as achieving as I could. The thing is, I probably was not really as undesirable a possibility as I thought I was, but regardless, that's one approach. The other approach you could take is to start hating chicks. And I've seen plenty of people coming around here talking to famous people, talking smack about women, and thinking maybe I was going to be on board with it because I'm anti social justice warrior nonsense. If you're talking about feminism as expressed as some sort of transgressive assertion that now they should get to stomp on men, on other people's rights. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Obviously, I don't approve of wrongness in any capacity. I don't approve of doing the wrong thing in response to somebody else doing the wrong thing. It doesn't mean I don't approve of some sort of response, but not an immoral one. So, my little brush with toxic masculinity, as it were, was simply having entirely consensual sex, but knowing that she was doing it for entirely the wrong reasons, for sure, and that I'd been fucked up to use narratives like that. It caused her some pain, I think. Like, I mean, not like physical pain or anything, but like, I don't think she was happy about the way that went down. I know I wasn't after the fact. And it was it was a side effect of me attempting to be something I never was and never would be. I thought, well, I'm having all this trouble getting in a relationship. Let me go out and slay some puss. But there are ways to slay the puss that are genuinely considerate of the woman. And there are plenty of women out there who probably like to get the puss slayed. There's nothing wrong with that. So slayers should slay slayees, and do so as kindly as well and kindly as they want, if they can. I don't know how that exactly goes down, but the point is, when I attempted to be somebody I wasn't, namely some guy who dated various chicks and tried to have sex with them before moving on to the next or whatever, it led me to that place of toxic masculinity where I found myself needing to score and keep score and try to achieve or something. But that more or less cured me of that until no, that wasn't. I was gonna say, and then on our first date with Kimberly, I tried to push her at having sex, and that was bad too. But I realized it's absolutely not the same thing at all. Kimberly was down and giving me plenty of go-ahead signals. Didn't. She just didn't want to. She just didn't want to have sex that night, the first date, and so I don't view that as toxic masculinity on my part because I was nervous and confused and liked her a lot and wasn't trying to fuck her and not see her again or something like that. But regardless, I still was trying to execute this how to be more successful with women plan, which included a certain amount of assertive entitlement. Well, obviously there are multiple considerations when talking about these issues. So the next consideration that kind of gets segued into here is some of the issues that men legitimately can voice some concerns about as well. It's not just men and women, with the men on the bad guy side and the women on the good guy side. It's not just men and women, with men on the aggressor side and women on the victim side. And it's not the case that all men and women experience these sort of things the same at all. So there are women out there who had sexual encounters with these men for whom it was entirely consensual, probably, and who were totally down. In other words, we can't deduce from the fact that these guys were predators that all their relationships were predatory. That muddies the water some too, It's a reality that, as I exemplified in my own much milder version of toxic masculinity. And the thing is, I've told this story before about Candace, and Is it plugged in? It's not plugged in. Why not? Where's the plug? But it is plugged in though. Is that not on? Okay, now it's plugged in. I mean, that incident proves I'm capable of being a douchebag. It doesn't mean I'm a predator. And I'm somebody that I don't think anybody would ever accuse that of ever. I mean, it allows me to be safe in mentioning this incident, because if there's one thing I've never been, it's too forward sexually. I've always been too neurotic, too hesitant, too not masculine. So that's the problem here that also comes into play, is that women want masculine men who seem confident, who know what they want, and who express a hunger for that woman in an animal sense. That's going to both make them feel attractive, turn them on, make them more likely to want to get with you. If anybody who has dated or even gone on a job interview or something knows, when you're trying to get acceptance from another party for a role, whether it's as a sexual partner or a boyfriend or an employee, you want to execute yourself in that auditioning process as likably and as best side forward as possible. It's naturally going to be the case then that there's a certain amount of positioning that goes on. Posturing, I should say. On dates. Like on a first date, for example. So one has to wonder the extent to which those individuals are authentically engaging with the other person. And one has to also acknowledge that a certain amount of posturing is unavoidable as you get to know people. Like I said, you're trying to put your best face forward and you want good first impressions and stuff like that. I made a bad first impression with Kimberly, but I made a good first impression on the date, but not so good afterwards. So it's going to be the case that people are aware of how the opposite sex responds typically to things. That means that men are encouraged to be successful with women, to be more masculine. But when it works, it's not when it works like that. It's that kind of masculinity that says, here, I'm going to manipulate this person into bed, or I'm going to manipulate something in the current status quo to get her to agree to go to bed with me, and she doesn't really want to, then you're missing, it's just entirely missing the opportunity to have a real relationship with somebody, even if it's not lasting or anything. At least try to treat the other person as a human being, and not just a means to get your rocks off. I feel for women. When I was in China, some shit went down with Delilah, and I mean, Candace didn't even tell me about it. Wouldn't tell me about it. Didn't mention it. Didn't let me become aware of it because I was stuck in China for a few months, and I couldn't do anything about it. I don't blame her for not telling me anything, but I mean, they should have pressed charges. I didn't have any. I didn't have any say in the matter. That fucking boy is a predator. Anyway. Forcing oneself on another person is an entirely different matter. But born of the same family of, or genus of fruit tree. I certainly have never forced myself on anybody. I've never done the weird ass shit that these guys like take out your dick and show it to some chicks and then start jacking off or something like that. Is so weird. What the fuck? I mean, that's, I don't even know what to make of that. It's like, to me, it would seem demeaning to him, but I guess he sees it the other way. I don't know. I agree. Women shouldn't have to put up with that shit. Of course not. Well, what do we do about this conundrum where, by and large, or as a not very consistent but general rule, women tend to reward an SE directness and a capturing of those powerful feelings in the moment that no doubt go along with that experience of being seduced in that fashion. So the answer, I think, here is pretty straightforward. It's simply that men have to own their insecurities, and that women ideally would recognize that there's virtue in neuroses. That the guy who doesn't come over and move on you in just the right way and wait for you to touch him first and then make you really comfortable and then make you feel really safe and then take you home, bed you and give you that great one night stand that you really liked, and he was nice. That guy is kind of the problem in this equation. When we choose to engage in sexual relationship with somebody, even if it's just one day or a year or 10 years, we validate that person's ontology. We say, your inner circle, physically, for sure. My inner circle is defined primarily by spiritual relationships, status of closeness emotionally, or frequency of talking, or other elements like that. That's what defines who's in my inner circle. To the extent that I really have one, I mean, I'm pretty open to broad inclusion in most matters. So, I'm not able to separate sex from connection. Even if I'm not particularly emotionally connected with somebody by it, although I probably am that as well. Or even if that's not, I guess a better way to put it is, even if the emotional connection is not the primary engine of connectivity, it's an intimacy. It's a level of intimacy that I don't want to have with somebody who's not that intimate with me ideationally, emotionally. I want to have sex with my teammate. I don't want to not have a teammate, and I don't want to have multiple teammates because this is double tennis. It's not football. I think knowing that I'm insecure about SE stuff, about being attracted to females, about whether or not I'm worthy of reproducing with, of having sex with, and whether or not I know how to do it well enough that I'm adequate as a boyfriend or something. Because I didn't have a lot of different experiences with different people, and I naturally am gonna have some insecurities about not being good at sex, because Kimberly had a lot of partners and a lot of experience, and so she knows more about it than me. The thing is, masculinity is important to most men who are heterosexual. It's important to me. Women could help things in general, I suspect, by actively engaging men in their lives on the subject of masculinity and asking them what sort of things that they, the women, do and say that make the men feel as though the value of their masculinity has been upheld, and which sort of things that women say or do, women in their lives say or do to them, that make them feel emasculated or otherwise less of a man. I'd encourage women to reinforce good masculinity, because for at least some types of people, like myself, in areas of our insecurity, it takes a lot of kind words to make up for a couple of harsh ones. And life's hard enough. You know, it's hard enough to figure out how to be a good person and who to be a good person with. And what constitutes being a good person with that person. It's hard enough to figure all that shit out when we're being kind to each other. And it's nearly impossible when we aren't. So, my last little message here then is to all the women out there who are subject to this kind of bullshit. I am with you. I'm not going to apologize because I don't do this kind of shit, but I'm with you that it's fucked up, and those men who are guilty of it should apologize. To the extent that I feel at least slightly vindicated here, it's that the kind of bad behavior being critiqued is the kind of bad behavior that I particularly find appalling because of my 8th slot insecurity function of extrovert sensing. So your 8th slot kind of defines for you what evil looks like. That's why I was so drawn to, obsessed with, emotionally involved with that Steubenville rape case. Perfect example of SE evil. You know, entitled, dumb football players at a high school that rewards football players with massive status and license to abuse, and you know, it's the textbook sort of thing that makes me mad. I feel, I guess, somewhat vindicated in that I like it when shit that's evil that goes along with my insecurity function gets hammered, because it's like, see, I told you SE was shitty. It's just a gut reaction. It's not like I have any reason to actually feel vindicated. I never really argued hard one way or the other on sexual harassment or anything like that. Although I did, I guess, argue hard about how teenage boys treat girls and stuff like that. I don't know. Be nice to each other. That's what we need to do. And remember, not all masculinity is toxic. And not all toxic masculinity is criminal. And not all things that appear to me as clear-cut cases of toxic masculinity necessarily are. It's about how consensual is it, and what kind of legitimacy there is to that consent, whether it's manipulated or whether it's naturally occurring. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. Go out there and fuck some sluts. I'm just kidding. I mean, sure, if that's what they and you want. I mean, if that's what they and you mutually want, then go ahead and do that. Alright, bye.